Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Howard's Rock Talk. I am Joy, and we have Chloe, August, Clara, and we also have another special guest here as well today with us. So, we are very excited for this episode where we'll be talking about women in sports media. And we will also have a special guest joining us to share her expertise in the field and her unique experiences, her challenges, and the opportunities that come with her job in sports. Before we dive into the discussion, it's important to recognize why this topic is of the utmost importance. Women continue to make significant strides in sports media, and their contributions are reshaping the landscape of how stories are told and whose voices are heard. Women's voices in sports media play a vital role by adding representation, by giving fresh perspectives, and also adding diversity to a field historically dominated by men. Whether through broadcasting, commentating, or interviewing, their presence encourages the next generation of female journalists and broadcasters to challenge gender norms. Seeing women thrive in these spaces is empowering because it promotes deeper, more engaging storytelling and it fosters inclusivity within professional sports. And now I'll hand it over to Clara.
Yes, thank you. So I mean, it's kind of obvious from the beginning of sports dominated by men, the most streamed games, sports played by men, um, and even behind the scenes, the broadcasters, the media personnel have typically been men. But recent years we have seen the women getting, um, I don't want to say included because that makes it sound like they don't deserve to be there. And 100%.
Mhm.
Women are making their voice heard and making it obvious that they deserve to be there, and proving that the sports world is not just for men. So a little bit of like history and more. Phyllis George was one of the most widely known as the first on-air female broadcaster in 1975. She was a co-host on the NFL Today, and that was the first widely known like national broadcast with a woman in it. Shortly after that, in 1978, Jane Kennedy replaced Phyllis for the NFL Today and was the first African American woman to be on a network sports television broadcast. Today, it's become so much more popular to have female broadcasters, female sideline reporters. Names such as Erin Andrews, I think, is a pretty common name, especially if you know a little bit more about sports and broadcasting. She's covered like most major sports games, such as like the Super Bowl, NFC Championships, and the World Series. Um, but I think it's also important to recognize that just beyond traditional reporting and like sideline reporting and broadcasting, women have also proven that um, it's more just about it's not just about appearance because roles tip like from sideline reporting, it is these women are very pretty, and I'm not saying like they have to be, but it is typically like they're nice to look at. It's easier to like pay attention from like the most part. But that's women have just gone beyond that even more. They're having um so much bigger roles in producing and executive roles. And I think it's important, like our guest speaker in class the other day, Hannah, like just proved that she's so young and so like energetic and she has such a important role in her she works for ESPN, like a crazy big network. So it's cool to see that like women are going past the just typical like sideline reporter um like roles.
Yeah. I like loved Hannah's like when she was talking to us, like I
She
was like,
was
wow, like this
great.
is so inspirational.
Yeah.
She's
She was
amazing. She's
hilarious.
amazing.
I
I
loved
know,
it.
she was so funny. She was like talking about being assertive, and I was like, okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, yeah, obviously there's been an increase in women in sports in the more recent years, as Clara was saying, but we should also talk about the barriers that women face and like often still face today in when working in sports. So for a long time, the industry obviously has been male dominated, and
women were seen as like less knowledgeable about sports, especially in things like play-by-play commentary and like the analysis of the game. But people will just like dismiss women's opinions in sport, or women, they'll just be questioned about like their knowledge or their expertise in the area, simply just because they're a woman. And then another major barrier that women in sport have to face is harassment and like discrimination in the workplace, which like obviously many women through history have faced, but especially in sports where like men are just everywhere in every area of sport and in all areas of the game. So women are just like bound to face some sort of like unnecessary comment or like jabs at them, whether they're like sexist comments or just like diminishing their overall knowledge of the game. Um, but then there also is an issue of representation. And historically, women, when working in sports media, they've been like underrepresented in higher positions. And like this lack of visibility just contributes to the idea that like the idea that sports is a man's world and like women shouldn't have a part in it, or um shouldn't hold like a big role in it. And then despite all of this, there are actually some incredible examples of women breaking through and just changing the game. And I know this might sound bad, but before like doing research on women in sports or like on these women that I'm about to talk about, like I genuinely don't think I could have named like a prominent woman figure in sports media like off the top of my head. Like if someone came up and asked me like name like this like a huge woman in sports, I could name athletes, but I couldn't name like broadcasters or anything like that, which might be bad, but yeah, there's obviously some great women who, now that I've researched, I know about them. But there's Beth Mowins, who became the first woman to call a nationally televised NFL game in 2017, which obviously just broke a huge barrier in football broadcasting. And her work just proved that women could also handle the same high pressure play by play roles as men could. And then on top of that, there's also the rise of women in media platforms like YouTube or like podcasts. And women like Kate Fagan have built audiences online by creating spaces where they can be heard and can talk about sports more freely. So while there's still these barriers, women in sports are like, they're just continuously proving that credibility isn't determined whether you're a man or a woman.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of important to realize that like what we're doing here in a sports comm class as four women in a group talking about this is something that would have been relatively unheard of 30, 40 plus years ago, and the fact that there's so many women in our class and there's women teaching sports comm classes. And if you go on to, I know I'm talking in our bubble of Clemson right now, but like we just had Kelly on, and she was the assistant sports editor at the Tiger. We used to have a sports editor that was a woman, and now she works for ESPN, and she worked for Clemson Athletics, and she was on with the ACC network. And it's super cool to see this growing change of more women in sports and breaking down some of these barriers and putting themselves out there into the public sphere and also opening themselves up for criticism to have those online public comments of people who are hiding behind a screen thinking that they can still talk like it's the 1950s and women don't have a place in media. But here we are sitting here right now proving that to be untrue.
Yeah, I think like when I was like applying to Clemson, I'm like, yeah, I want to go into sports comm. I want to go into the sports industry. I got a lot of comments are like, oh, like it's like very male dominated,
Mm-hmm.
very not like negative
Yeah.
comments, but just comments. And I was like, yeah, like it is. But then I came here and like honestly, majority of my classes are women. And like when I join these like clubs, like sports, like Tiger Vision and stuff, and there's a lot of women. I'm like, this is so cool. Like I was expecting like to be male dominated, but you
Mm-hmm.
see so much more of like there are so many women who are so interested in this and not as like public. Like many people still think it's as male dominated. It's definitely changing a lot recently.
Yeah. And like even today, like if someone like I don't know, like I'm meeting someone and they're like, "What's your major?" And I say sports comm. Like I'm probably not being judged, but I still feel like I am. Like I don't know
Yeah,
why,
it's like that
but it's
stereotype.
like I feel like they think that it just should be all men, and I'm just like, ugh, hopefully, you're not judging me for this or anything, but
Yeah, I think also I think it's great how like everyone's been highlighting like the women who we've had come into the classroom as like guest speakers because like I also noticed like I just noticed this like as you all were talking about like the women that like we haven't I don't think we've had any men, correct me if I'm wrong, who have came and spoke in the class so far that we've had for sports media. So I feel like that alone, even when he had I think her name was Olivia, one of his former classmates come in and speak and talk about how to use Canva and like how to do podcasting and things like that. Like showing her expertise and showing that like, hey, like a woman can do this, a woman can be just more knowledgeable on certain things of sports than a man. So I think that like that was also powerful. And then of course we just had Hannah come on yesterday to talk about, you know, her experience at the University of Alabama and working with ESPN. So I think like because like we're having this conversation and we've seen those examples in real time, not just like in the world of sports, like watching shows like ESPN or another sports network, but because we're seeing those in real time on our college campuses, it makes like the importance of women in sports media even more impactful.
I
So,
think it's also
yeah, I just have to bring that out there.
no, that's a good point. I think it's also important to point out that like we have been like all these women speakers and all these women in the field, and it's not just because they're women. Like it's not just them trying to get the diversity or trying to like hit that quota. Like these women are genuinely knowledgeable, and like we can tell when Hannah came in and Olivia, like they know what they're talking about. And it's in my other classes, like these women genuinely know what they're talking about, and it's just cool that like it's not just for some diversity. Like these women, they got their shit together. Like
yeah.
it's cool. It's cool.
Yeah.
So, our guest today has been working in sports since the beginning of her college career. Kelly Kaeblin is currently serving as the digital media intern for the Savannah Ghost Pirates, and she's also the head of social media and content creation for College Hockey South. Formerly, Kelly served as the assistant sports editor for the Tiger and was also the team manager for Clemson Ice Hockey. So, Kelly, you've obviously built your career on hockey. So just to start out our questions, I would love to know what drew you to the sport originally.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from New Jersey, actually. And hockey obviously is a little bit bigger up in the north. So I grew up watching hockey with my dad. But it wasn't really until my senior year of high school that I really started to get into it. He and I were watching the Eastern Conference Finals, I think, and it was the Islanders and the Tampa Bay Lightning. And there was a guy on the Lightning. His name is Ross Colton, and he actually grew up very in the same county that I grew up in. Like his dad and my dad used to play poker together type of situation. So when my dad introduced me to like that specific series, he was like, "Oh, like Ross is over here, like playing for the Lightning." And I thought that that was really cool. And then I started to watch it with my dad, and I got really into it. And then, of course, I decided to come to Clemson, where there's no NCAA program, which would just be my luck. But I ended up finding Clemson's club program, and I just absolutely fell in love with working in the sport from there.
Yeah, I mean, like you really pioneered the coverage of Clemson hockey at the Tiger. I feel like we're still trying to like reach your level there. But that's super cool. I mean, you totally like built your professional career starting out on that, and that's like so cool that you were able to start that at Clemson.
Yeah, I think that like you would be surprised how big club hockey is getting now. When I first started, it was still in a little bit like it was like 3 years ago now. It was in it a little bit of an earlier stage. But now, even like working in the ECHL, I've talked to quite a few professionals who've been in the industry longer than I have, who also started with their colleges club programs, whether it was NCAA or club. But hockey's definitely blowing up, and I'm loving to see it.
Oh, that's so cool. All right.
I have the first question, and this isn't my real question, but you said you're from New Jersey. Are you a Devils fan?
I am a
Is
Devils
that
fan. I am a
okay?
Devils fan.
Okay. I'm a Toronto fan, so
Okay,
I'm
very cool.
kind of into hockey, yeah. But my real question, you've been in sports a long time from college up until now, like your career, what is one lesson you've learned, either in your professional career now or throughout college that you've like it stuck with you?
I think that the biggest thing for me that I've learned in the last few years, especially as a woman in sports, is I think that it's so important to be a sponge. And you'll hear that a lot throughout your professional careers. But any opportunity that you get that it like could teach you something, or even if you initially think you're not gonna like it, any opportunity is a learning experience, and you might end up liking something that you do way more than you think you would. I originally started in writing, and I love writing. I still do, but like now I work in media, so it's a little bit different. Thought I wanted to go into broadcasting at one point, and it's just like completely changed for me. So I think that like, but if I didn't have specific experiences, like when I was in college or when I interned with the Greenville Swamp Rabbits in college or whatever, I wouldn't have known where I wanted to eventually end up and like wouldn't have gotten to where I want to be now. So my biggest, like the biggest lesson I think is be a sponge and take every opportunity at like as a learning experience, even if you don't think you're going to enjoy it at first.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yes, so being with you, being a woman in a career that is so heavily male dominated, what is some advice that you would offer to other women to in order to confidently advocate for themselves while maintaining a sense of professionalism but also balance? Because I know like a lot of times with women in sports, they have like stereotypes of like, oh, you're not as knowledgeable or oh, you're just a girl, you may not know as much, you don't have the same enthusiasm that a man has. So, like, how would you handle that?
That's definitely something that you're going to see being in the industry as a woman. And it is an unfortunate reality, but it's just something, it's just another thing. It's a side effect, honestly. I think that the biggest thing and the biggest way that I have remained confident and been able to get through that is one, I am confident in what I know. I know hockey. Like when I worked at Clemson, I knew Clemson hockey better than anyone on the planet. There was nobody that could have told me anything I didn't already know about that sport. And there were sometimes like players would come up to me and ask me something or ask a question and I would be the one answering it. They're like, "How do you know that?" And I'm like, "I have to know. I have to know." So I think that it does kind of suck that like, am I allowed to say that? Sorry.
You're
It does kind of
you're
suck
good.
that
You're good.
like
Listen.
that you have to like work twice as hard. But I think that at the end of the day, working twice as hard, maybe not twice as hard, but like making sure that I'm confident in what I know is like will help along the way. And I think that a lot of the time with as far as like the balance side of the question goes, I think a lot of the time women get a bad rep in sports, not only because it's a male dominated industry, but also because a lot of the time you can't advocate for yourself or stand up for yourself without getting called a mean name or without somebody saying like, okay, like you're being a little bit aggressive. And I'm like, I'm not being
Mhm.
aggressive, I'm being assertive because you're not listening to me because I'm not a man. And it is a side effect of working in the industry, but I think that it's just one of those things that like you have to become a little bit, you have to be your biggest fan and your biggest like advocate because nobody else is going to do it for you. And you are going to work with other women in the industry or men who act like they're there for you, but actually aren't. So at the end of the day, it's just going to have to be you, and that's okay. But I think number one, it has you have like your attitude towards working has to stem from an inner confidence. Like you have to have that foundation built, I think, is what I would say. If I could speak. Because I stuttered
Yeah, yeah.
over every single word.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So for like a kind of a fun question for you, for you, from your perspective, how do you see digital media like shaping the future of hockey coverage?
I think that hockey is in a place right now where it's just going to keep going up. For a long time, I think it was like one of the most underrated sports, and people are
Hmm.
just now starting to realize how cool it is. And I think that honestly, social media and like digital media generally has a lot to do with that. Whether it's like a team on TikTok or like the NHL is putting something out, or like if you follow the Devils at all, you've seen like the Instagram hockey thing with Jack Hughes, or like, oh, you play Instagram hockey, and people are like, what is that? But it's like, it's sports is one of the fun things about working into hockey and working in sports in general is like it's so connected to like the media and the conversations that are being had about it, like the sport itself is too. So I think that like I think I would say just being able to like be a part of it, and especially like in the South too. That was like one of the biggest things for Clemson was when I was there and I was working for that team, like that was really growing and we were trying to grow hockey in the South specifically. And I'm doing that again down in Savannah, but we're seeing growth there, and we're also seeing growth with women's hockey now with the PWHL. And I think that like we're in such a social sphere societally that it's just like inevitable. But
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, for sure. What's funny is I am on the club lacrosse team here, and I literally didn't know that there was club hockey. Like, I never heard of them last year, and then I saw like a TikTok on my For You page, and it was like they had like the little microphones, and I think they were answering like something. I forgot what it was, but I was like, wait, what? I did not know there was an ice hockey team here.
Yeah, so I was doing a whole lot of that last year, like the mini mic questions or like the practice questions or whatever.
Yeah.
The year before we had one go pretty viral, and that was I get asked about this all the time. It got almost 1 million views on TikTok, I think. And
Oh,
that question was, if who's your least favorite NHL player and why? And a
um,
lot of the TikTok community really liked that because TikTok loves controversy. They love to hate on somebody. So instead of saying like, "Oh, who's your favorite player?" which nobody would have cared about, it was who's your least favorite. And if you know anything about college boys, you know that they're opinionated and they don't care. So they were like all ears. They were just like yelling out names, and people were like, this person, like, swear word, this and that. And we were like, oh my gosh. And that people on TikTok were really receptive to that because they thought it was hilarious. And I think that that was like the first time people were, I saw so many comments. I'd been covering the team for 2 years at this point. I saw so many comments that were like, wait, we have a hockey team? And I was like, we sure do. I got that question so often. We do have a hockey team, if anybody's wondering.
I think I have a question
yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
So on the digital media front, for someone who's in college wanting to get into the digital media side of sports, what would you tell like a Clemson student who's interested in that?
I think that my biggest piece of advice, always, first of all, join the Tiger. I love the Tiger. I love the newspaper. I think that being a part of the newspaper definitely set me up to like for everything I did because that was like that was my first step into sports. And there are so many opportunities. You literally can do whatever you want, whether you want to take photos, you want to write, you want to be in social media, you want to be in ads, you want to be in business. The Tiger is the place for you. It is so awesome. And it's like you get it's free it's free advertising for yourself. It's free access to any resource you might need. And Clemson is such a big brand, especially when it comes to sports, that like being able to get into the rooms with like a press ID or like a press ID or whatever is going to be the thing that sets you up for success. And I don't think enough people take advantage of it. But whether it's the newspaper or it's Clemson Athletics or whatever, my biggest piece of advice would be to take advantage of any opportunity that comes your way as far as like gaining experience. Like I said, in sports, experience is literally everything. You could have my roommate who I live with now and love, who is also working in professional sports, was a fashion merchandising major. It does not matter what you major in. It doesn't matter what classes you, well, it kind of matters. Sorry, Sam. It does matter. But it matters less than it would for somebody who wanted to go into business or who wanted to go into, the medical field or whatever. For sports, if you're looking to get in a job, especially post grad, a job that pays your dream job, whatever it is, especially in sports media, you have to have experience on your resume. And being at a school like Clemson, where there are so many opportunities at your disposal, it would be a shame for you to not take advantage of all of those. Um, my biggest thing with the Tiger was like it was an easy way for me to get my name out there, get content that was out with my name on it. And that was the thing that got me my first internship in pro sports. It was the fact that I could write. I have confirmation from the guy who hired me that said, we looked at your stuff on the newspaper and that's the reason we hired you. And I said, okay. And it's gotten me here. And even though I don't write anymore, it still got me here. So I would 100% recommend taking advantage of any of those.
Yeah, you have
Yeah,
a
for sure.
crazy resume with the
I
Oh
I
Tiger.
have
yeah.
I
a
was
I
like
do have
looking back through it as the person who was editing so many of those hockey articles last year. It's like I know exactly how many many you did, but like looking back there, I was like, wow,
Yeah, I
it's
wrote over
impressive.
100 articles when I was with the Tiger. I did the math.
Okay.
And a vast majority of them were about the club hockey program. A couple were football. I did like pickleball. I did one or two lacrosse, I think. Um, I think I did like maybe one soccer. I don't know. There were a few. And I did like opinion stuff too. But a lot of it was about hockey. And it was awesome. You guys should go back and read it. No, you shouldn't, but
That's absolutely too cool.
All 100 of them.
yeah, all 100. Let's trend
Subtle
down the newspaper.
plug. Subtle plug.
Shameless promo.
Okay. So I also have like another fun question. So
Yeah.
I know you said how basically Clemson basically opened up doors for you. Basically like being at a D1 school and like knowing the impact that it has on your career in today's time, day and age, would you recommend someone who also wants to go down that same career path to also do a D1? Or would you say like, hey, you never know what could happen. You could go to any other school. It doesn't have to be a D1. Like, which would you recommend? Like D1 or
I think that it definitely helped that Clemson has such like a big name in sports. Like when I would if you walk into any room, even I work in hockey, right? And no, we have a club hockey team. We don't have an NCAA program. I've walked into rooms where people went to the University of Michigan, Boston University, all of these big hockey schools that also had football programs that are like, wait, Clemson has hockey? And I'm like, yeah. But they're like, oh, but I only knew it for football. But they still know about it. And I think that that really helped because even though it wasn't D1 in the sport that I necessarily wanted to work in, Clemson has a big name and it's easily identifiable. So it's like an easy way for people, and it has a really, really big alumni base. So when you're getting hired, you'll hear this a lot too. A lot of getting hired somewhere is about who you know. And Clemson's alumni connections, I think, also helps. That goes for any D1 school. But I don't think that it's necessarily like if the deciding factor between you going to a school that's D1 and where you're going to pay full tuition or D3 and you're not going to pay anything, like don't go to the D1 school, go to college for free and you can still get the experience. You know what I mean? I definitely think in my experience, going to Clemson and having that brand name has helped me, even though it's not in the sport I wanted to work in, but I still think it helps. And I think that also there are just so many opportunities at Clemson, like we were talking about earlier. Like even if you wanted to join a student newspaper, technically you could do that anywhere, right? But if you want to work for Clemson Athletics and you want to be an SID or you want to work for, the Clemson football team in recruiting, you can do that somewhere else, but it's not going to have the same emphasis, I suppose, that it would have if you worked for like, I don't know, I can't even think of a non D1 school right now. But you know what I mean. Or Tri-County or
yeah,
whatever. Like,
yeah.
I think experience definitely is number one, and wherever you can get the experience that works the best for you is that would be my recommendation. It doesn't have to be D1. Does it help? Sure.
All
Okay.
right,
Thank
awesome.
you.
Of course.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to come answer our questions. We appreciate it so much. I think that's all we have. So yeah,
Yes,
thank you
thank
so
you
much,
guys so much.
Kelly.
This was so fun.
Yes,
Thank
Podcast
you
thank
so
debut.
much.
I've
you.
Thank
never been on one
you.
before.
What, really?
Shout out. This is Sam's class, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shout out Sam.
Yes.
I love Sam so much. He's awesome. He rocks. Sam is a great resource. Use him. He'll help you. Okay, well, thank you
Awesome.
Got
guys
it.
so much again. I'll, cut my losses here. I know you guys have more to film, so thank you again. I really appreciate it. And let me know if you need anything else, Chloe.
Thank you,
Thank you
Kelly.
so
Of course.
much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, well. That wraps up the second episode of Howard's Rock Talk. A huge thank you to our special guest today, Kelly Kaeblin, for sharing her insights and her experiences, and also to everyone who tuned in to join the conversation about women in sports media. To my lovely co-hosts, you all were amazing. I just think, like, honestly, personally, it's just very inspiring to see how women continue not only to shape, but to redefine the sports world through their talent, their passion, and their leadership. So be sure to follow Howard's Rock Talk for future episodes as we keep highlighting powerful voices and stories across the sports industry. Until next time, I'm Joy, and we will see you all in the next episode of Howard's Rock Talk. Bye. Bye, everyone.